So I remember the first time that I submitted a ticket to WP Engine. I was running a plugin called AdSanity, and it was rotating ads. Now, it was supposed to do it randomly, and I noticed that it wasn't random at all. Like, whatever was the first record or the first custom post type for that ad in the list was essentially the only ad that was being presented over and over again. So I contacted WP Engine, who they tried to look at it. I also contacted the folks over at AdSanity. You know what I didn't do, though, right? I didn't write a blog post highlighting that the random function was completely not working at WP Engine. I didn't do that, right? I contacted both vendors, the vendor of the host and the vendor of the plugin, and I started asking questions about it. Now, it turns out that because I was asking the vendor, in this case, the host, WP Engine, about this random function, I wasn't the first person or the only person to have asked about randomization. And then a couple of weeks, I noticed that there was suddenly a new setting, right? And you could check a box and you could do some stuff, and all of a sudden, you'd get randomization working. That's not the only time that happened, right? I had at one point a problem with shopping cart, and I was using WooCommerce on a site hosted by WP Engine, and I remember submitting a ticket, and the first answer I got back wasn't great, so I followed back up with him and said, I don't think that's a great answer. Here's some of what I'm thinking. And turns out, I found out as I talked to a couple other friends that they'd sent in some of the same kinds of ideas. And lo and behold, over a little bit of time, the product improved. Which highlights a pattern, right? And it's a pattern that works related to all products, right? Which is there's no way that you can predict in advance exactly how an audience, exactly how a set of customers are going to use your product until they do it, right? There's no way to predict every way that your software is going to get used, and there's no way to predict what's going to be considered a bug, right? Because you don't know the degrees to which they're going to move towards the edges and try things out. Today, an article came out. Now, I love Rob and the guys over at Audit WP. I've paid for their service. I've hired them. So there's nothing. I don't have any particular bent against Audit WP. In fact, I loved what Rob was doing with Real Fat Media, and now that he's doing Audit WP, I want to be a supporter and a fan. And the site just came up, and it's pretty cool. But I couldn't help but notice that today's launched article, the big deal, right, was essentially calling out a vendor and specifically highlighting and making a really big deal out of some things that I wasn't sure were huge deals. I mean, definitely they were deals, right? But they were deals that I would think, as I started reading through the article, I thought, well, of course you've contacted them, right? Of course you've talked to them directly. But I notice nothing in the text says that. And in fact, when you start reading the responses from WP Engine and even from other people in the community, you start realizing that maybe the size and grandeur of the content was created at that level simply to garner attention. Now, you could guess it's attention at WP Engine, so they fix the issue, or attention to bring people to the new site. I don't know, but here's the point. When it comes to social media, right? When it comes to communication and public discourse, all of us have access to a bullhorn, right? All of us have access to scream at the top of our lungs whatever we want to scream at. And these days, we have thousands of people, or some people tens of thousands of people, who will pay attention and listen. And with all that freedom, right, to say anything we want, whenever we want, however we want, I think there also comes a degree of responsibility, right? There comes a need to temper the ability to make a big deal out of things that aren't necessarily a big deal with the responsibility to ultimately uplift, hold up, help out the other members of our community. Now, you can look at Audit WP. It's not a regular audit service. It's not an SEO service. It's an audit service for WordPress. And WP Engine, right? You'll notice the thing they have in common is WP in both, right? WP Engine is a hosting provider in our community. You have two vendors, right, who are in our community. And it suggests that one of the most effective ways to get something done is to reach out directly to other people in the ecosystem and say, I've noticed these things and I'd like to help you. In fact, what was interesting was, as you read the post, and I don't know if you remember, but maybe a year ago, right? There was another little set of tweets I saw go back and forth where Yoast and WP Engine were going back and forth over staging and what was indexed and what wasn't. And because of some of that, I think WP Engine had gotten better. And in today's article, you see that, again, Yoast comes back and says, actually, I don't think some of these issues are real. And of course, Jason from WP Engine also came in and said, actually, some of these things are incorrect. But the thing that I read in there, right, the reason that caused me to record this video is that at the end of the day, right, there's a statement in there from the author that says, I don't think anyone would have listened if I hadn't made such a big post, such a big stink. I don't think that's the way we ought to work. I don't think that's the way we ought to be known. In the community, I think we ought to be known for people who are known more for listening than for speaking. Known for paying attention, right? Known for when the first sign that we see something, instead of judging the message by the person who said it, judge the message on the merits itself, which allows us to not create grandiose messages. It allows us to just put a simple message out and then let the message do its work. Let people look at it. Let people evaluate it. Let people react to it. And more often than not, I think you have more credibility when you don't make the stink, but when you go directly to the source and say, these are some of the things that I think might help you. Because in that way, you're being helpful. And if you're helpful and you communicate in a helpful way, I think people will respond. So if you have an issue, whether it's with WP Engine or whether it's with any other host, whether it's with any plugin provider, or whether it's with me and something on my site, do me a favor. Contact us directly. Interact with us directly. And see if that doesn't get you what you need. See if it doesn't get you what you want. I think you'll be surprised.